Welcome and great morning, beautiful people. Welcome to the Unplugged with Pam podcast, Breakfast Club edition, brought to you by Chosen Global. Good morning. Welcome to another episode. And if you're brand new here, understand we don't just talk about growth, we walk in it. And I'm excited, as I am each and every single Thursday, that we get to chat on a live episode, because it's a very special weekend, right? We are celebrating this weekend our 250th freedom anniversary in the United States of America and all over the world, really. And this weekend, millions of Americans, in fact, will be celebrating. Hopefully, you guys are going to be with your families, absolutely having a blast. But millions of Americans, in fact, are going to be celebrating Independence Day, and we'll gather with family, and of course, the barbecue. We can't be without that, right? And of course, one of my girls is just asking me, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I don't know, but I gotta watch fireworks, because I mean, is it really a 4th of July if we don't watch fireworks?" And of course, we'll wave the flags, and rightfully so, right? We're so grateful for the freedoms that we have. And as I was reflecting this week, one question kept coming to my heart. What if we're celebrating freedom on the outside while still living in bondage on the inside? And whether you are accompanying us live on this episode, whether you are in your car, whether you are watching the replay, take notes. I always say note takers are history makers. Take notes, learn this stuff, because one day maybe you'll have to teach it. And more than anything, you'll get to refer back to it. And we're always here to add value to you. So it's interesting, because I just came back with a few of my girlfriends and some new girlfriends that I met, and we just judged the Universal Petite Pageant. It was on Margaritaville, and we had an absolute blast. And it was so beautiful seeing so many women from all walks of life. And I'm talking about, we had 5 different categories, and one of them was as young as a teenager and all the way until, a little bit more senior women. And it was just so beautiful to witness such inspiration and such stories. And even you're seeing the teen universe that won, shout out to Kendra Ortega, but all of these women had so many incredible stories. And even the girl that won from Cuba, she was a teenager, 15 years old, and she actually even learned English for the competition. And I was just like, wow, I was so blown away. And when I think of so many people that, when I think of what freedom means and the freedom that we get to celebrate, and this young lady, her story was just one of which just resonated with me at 15 years young. The amount of sacrifices, the dedication, the work, all of these things. And it got me to thinking, because, when I say that we could be living outside freedom, but captive on the inside and bondage on the inside, why do I mean by that? Well, this young lady, one of the things that just, um, impacted me and so many other judges was just, like, so many of them from all different walks of life, they had so much courage, right? They were not imprisoned by fear. And I think that we can live in a free country, however, still be imprisoned by fear, still be imprisoned by anxiety, still be imprisoned by unforgiveness, still be imprisoned by comparison, still be imprisoned by shame, still be imprisoned by the opinion of others, still be imprisoned by limiting beliefs. And when I reflect on all of these things, and we're talking about something, it's just been on my heart, because truth of the matter is, freedom isn't free. Shout outs to my godson nephew, Jaden Manuel Guzman, who today will be in his turning green ceremony in the United States Infantry in Fort Benning, Georgia. Love you, Jaden. I'm so proud of you. But, And I'm just reflecting on all of these things, right? And I'm overwhelmed with just joy and gratitude and pride, and seeing all of these things just flourish and happen. And I love that so many young people are just on fire for freedom, that are just on fire for legacy, that are just on fire for impact, that are just on fire for the Lord, that are just on fire to progress. And the reason why I think of those things and it gets me so fired up, it gets me so emotional all at the same time, is because the truth of the matter is that I know freedom isn't free. In fact, freedom is not free, not nationally. Freedom isn't free spiritually. Freedom isn't free personally. Even worth, like, I believe everything, right? Everything worthwhile is going to cost us something. It's going to cost us something. And maybe the question necessarily isn't, am I free? The better question is, what price am I willing to pay that's keeping me from the freedom I'm praying for? So if you're taking notes, again, what price am I unwilling to pay that's keeping me from the freedom that I've been praying for? So we're going to talk about 10 quick things. Number 1, freedom cost us comfort. One of the hardest decisions that I had to make in my entrepreneurial journey, or just really in my life's journey, was leaving my corporate banking career. Man, on paper, it did not make sense at all. I mean, you're talking about a 6-figure salary, the benefits, the pension, all of these things, right? And of course, the stability, the income, the security. And most people would have looked at my life and thought, why would she leave? But there was something inside of me that knew that I was not called to continue to build someone else's dream forever. I was called more than anything to build what God had put on the inside of me. Leaving comfort was not easy. However, staying comfortable would have cost me my purpose. Again, leaving comfort was not easy, but staying comfortable would have cost me my purpose. And I bet that I could even say it would have cost me my legacy. I believe that sometimes the biggest prison isn't where you are, it's what you're afraid to leave. The biggest prison is not where you are, it's what you're afraid to leave. So, and I say this because y'all know, and if you're brand new here, I believe in the Lord Jesus Christ, okay? And I'm not here to post my favorite belief upon you, but this is what I believe in. And I believe that, and scripture tells us that it is for freedom that Christ has set us free in Galatians 5:1. Well, freedom isn't just something we were given. In fact, it's something that we're called to walk in. And when I think about comfort, man, I have such honor and pleasure and privilege of getting to champion this generation, the next generation, whether I am empowering women and young girls or entrepreneurs and business owners and all of the things. And I always talk about this because your comfort zone is your broke zone. I've seen so many people just sit on ideas and sit on talent and sit on gifts and just sit on things and then it not go anywhere. And the reality is it's because they're uncomfortable. They're uncomfortable. They get uncomfortable, but then they go right back to wanting to be comfortable. So I say that because it's like, what is it going to cost? What are you willing to pay? If you know your comfort zone is your broke zone, are you willing to get uncomfortable? So some people are like, oh, I'm willing to get uncomfortable by getting on social media. That's not really my thing. Sometimes I believe, and we'll keep talking about this in a second, you got to be uncomfortable shedding your old self. You got to be uncomfortable shedding your old mindset, your old habits, your old ways to respond to things, your old ways to communicate. You got to be comfortable to leave the old version of you behind. So I could spend all day today just talking about that. Freedom is going to cost you comfort. And a lot of times it's way beyond the surface of what you believe. A lot of us, and I've seen it all day long, it's like prosperous. You see business owners, you see entrepreneurs, community builders thriving. And that one thing that holds them back is that they're not willing to get uncomfortable. Or, in fact, is that they're not willing to get uncomfortable being held accountable. And accountability, it always feels like an attack when you're not ready to be held accountable. So I've seen so many people just let their ego and let their old self and let their human nature take over, in fact, the potential or their purpose, and self-sabotage these things because they're just not willing to get uncomfortable. And you can fake the funk all you want. You can, in this world of social media, you can go post as many things as you want. But the reality is, if you can't, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this, I promise, I'm going to move on. But if you can't just have a one-to-one conversation with yourself and being like, yo, sis, bruh, like, talk to yourself, queen, king, however you address yourself, but have a real conversation with you. What are those things that, because you're so comfortable being in it, you're unwilling to grow? You're unwilling to get to what it is that you want. You're unwilling to be free because you just don't want to let go of the comfort in that area. And a lot of times it's not so much comfortable in it's not so that we have comfort in business or comfort in life. You're just so comfortable in your skin. You're just so comfortable with your habits. You've just been so comfortable with the lack of discipline. You've been just so comfortable with wanting sleep more than you want to succeed. Now, don't get me wrong. Rest is a requirement. It's not a reward. But when I see people that they're like, oh yeah, I'm waking up at noon every day, and I expect to have a 7-figure, 8-figure business. No, you don't. Stop it. You don't. Because again, you rather be comfortable. And I'm going to continue. Freedom also costs forgiveness. It does. Some of you, when I talk about, some of you guys know my story of my mom becoming sick and how life changed overnight, and becoming her caregiver was one of the greatest honors of my life. It was also one of the hardest seasons that I've ever walked through. Watching someone that you love suffer, it just changes you. Losing them changes you. There were moments that I could have become bitter, and in fact, in the moment I did. And thank God for God. Thank God for Jesus. Thank God for therapy. Thank God for community. But there was moments that I could have just stayed bitter, and I concede. And there was even times that I was just asking God why. And I could have stayed stuck in that space. I could have stayed just stuck in grief. But I realized something, that healing doesn't mean you stop missing someone. Healing means that you stop allowing the pain to define you. Okay? Healing doesn't mean that you stop missing someone. It just means that you stop allowing the pain to define you. That's freedom. So, of course, I still miss my mom every single day. Some days more than others. But grief no longer owns me. Because there was a season where it just owned me, right? And if you've ever been through something like that, or if you're navigating loss right now, I encourage you, feel your feelings, because there's freedom on the other side of that. But do not stay there. Do not stay there. Because when you think about freedom cost forgiveness, it's not only so much forgiveness to others, it's also forgiveness to yourself. It's also just letting it go of things that you cannot control, learning to control the controllables. I always say you can control what you think, you can control what you do, you can control what you say, and you can control how you feel. Those are the 4 things. Shout out to my brother from another, Mr. Darren Walker. That I remember one of my mentors, D, and great friends, he told me this during the pandemic, and I was just like, whatever, And I'm thinking during that time, business was rough. My business was just declining. And I was just like, man. And I'm thinking, I'm like, all right, talking about that. And then we get hit. Really was right around this weekend, because we were visiting my mom for July 4th weekend during 2020, and when all of these things happened. But, I remember just things changing all of a sudden. And I'm a little bit of a control freak. I'm working on it. So as I'm talking to y'all, I'm talking to me too. Okay. So I'm like, man, I have to only focus on the things that I can control. Because if I don't focus on the things that I can control, those things that I can control are going to control me. And when I say that, healing doesn't mean that you stop missing someone. It means that you stop allowing the pain to define you. It's freedom, because yes, I still miss her every single day, but grief no longer owns me. Love does. Purpose does. Her legacy always lives through me. And when you think about the forgiveness, a lot of times I'm asking God for forgiveness, because I was so angry at him. Me and him were tussling for a long time. Sometimes I also just needed to forgive myself. And sometimes, and maybe for you, you're like, well, Pam, I can't relate to those things. Well, who do you need to forgive? Who do you need to forgive? Because forgiveness is never about that person. It's about you. And that is when you learn to forgive, you realize that it's freedom, because you're letting it's always, and I always say it's like, and you guys heard me talk about this a few episodes ago, where I was like, there's a lot of times when you're not dealing with the work, and then you're not dealing with the stuff that's going on the inside, that we're quick to be like, nah, it's not what that person did to me. How dare they? And we're pointing the finger, bah, 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 right? Bow, bow. But we're failing to realize that when we point one finger, we have 3 automatically pointing back at us. So at some point, you got to say, you know what? I need to take ownership of this, and I need to not give somebody my personal power. Because when we do not heal from those things that have cut us, we will bleed on those who did not. But really and truly, it's because we have to go search inward to see the things. Maybe it's not you forgiving other people. Maybe it's not you forgiving God. Maybe it's you not forgiving seasons. Maybe who you need to forgive is yourself. Maybe you just need to take a moment to say, you know what? I forgive me. I forgive what I thought I should have done. I forgive what I thought I should have been. I forgive my shortcomings, and just move on. So, number 3, freedom costs discipline. And we're talking, and that kind of goes a little bit hand in hand, I know, with comfort. But people tell me all the time, like, Pam, I wish I could travel like you. I wish I had your flexibility. I wish I had time freedom. And here's what people do not see. They don't see the early mornings. They don't see the late nights. They don't see the sleepless days sometimes. They don't see the craziness when it comes to the events. They don't see the things that goes on behind the scenes. They don't see the sacrifices. And in fact, they darn sure do not see the investments. They don't see the daily deposits. They don't see the daily disciplines. They do not see the silent battles, the years of saying no to things that would have distracted me. Because freedom is not luck. It's discipline repeated over time. Everyone wants freedom. However, few want the habits that actually create it. So when I say about discipline, and I tell people like, man, look at your life scale. right? And yes, we can break it down into, all of the different life segments, but I love breaking it down into the 5 F's or 6 F's in your life, right? Whether it's your faith, your family, your fitness, your fortune, your fun. Sometimes I'll add the feelings if people like really need to deal with some heavy stuff on there. But you got to take care of you. You have to make the daily deposits in each and every single area of your life. And why do I say that? Because no, there's no such thing as balance. However, if you want to talk about the holistic, the whole picture, because that's really what it's about. It's about you in the entire picture. Why? Because how you do anything is how you do everything. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. Yes, indeed. But to whom much is given, much is required. So if you are ever in a space and you're like, okay, well, what areas am I not being disciplined in? Is it that I rather sleep more than I want to succeed? Is it that I don't want to work on my communication? Is it that I have a problem expressing or having healthy conflict, healthy conflict resolution? Right? I've seen so many adults and I'm looking at them and I'm like, like communication is a beautiful discipline in itself, because you just want to not have that conversation or handle a business conversation like you would have handled a conversation as a teenager. And that's why there's so many grown old people that are really not even adults, because they haven't developed the emotional maturity as of yet. And again, how you do anything is how you do everything. And if you don't take care of what's going on in here, right? Of what's going on in here, when we talk about success is a game of inches. Yes, it's what the thoughts that are going on in here, but sometimes it's what's inches from your heart to your head. You understand? So when you think about those things and you're asking yourself these questions, is like, what am I willing to be more disciplined in? Or what areas do I need to be more disciplined in? Or what area do I just need to get back to being disciplined in? That was me. If you guys heard a few episodes ago when we spoke about, I was like, man, I was dealing with so much stuff, health scares with my dad and travels and business, and I had a million one things going on. And I was like, and I just didn't feel like getting up and doing the things that I needed to do. And I was slowly but surely felt myself going in a downward spiral. And I was like, we got to get out of this. Get back to the basics. Get back to your daily disciplines. Get back to taking care of all of the areas of your life, because you can't pour from an empty cup, and how you do anything is how you do everything. So sometimes it's me coaching myself through the same things, because I'm human as well. So when, again, people see the story and the glory, but they don't understand the story, understand that freedom is going to cost you discipline too. Freedom costs you faith. And I'm going to interchange that and say, freedom also costs you belief, right? We're almost wrapping up, guys. It's 7 things. But freedom costs you faith. Why do I say that? Because there have been so many seasons in my life that I had no idea how things are going to work out. Absolutely not. From launching a podcast to launching events to launching retreats. Oh my goodness. To hosting conferences, to building businesses, to walking into TV rooms and studios. And sometimes, and I want to say the majority of the time, in fact, I didn't really have all of the answers. But here's what I did have. I had just enough faith to take the next step. Sometimes you don't need the answers. You don't need every single thing, but you just need the next step. You just need enough to muster up the courage, because really and truly, we only need the faith the size of a mustard seed. But you just need enough faith to continue. And it's not just, oh my goodness, I need to have everything. I need to have the roadmap. I want the blueprint. I want all of the, no, but you just need enough faith to take the next step. God rarely, I don't know about y'all, but in my experience, he rarely ever says, here's the staircase. No, but he gives us the next step, because freedom often begins with obedience before certainty. So if you are ever finding yourself and you're in that space, and yes, John 8:36 tells us, so the Son sets you free, you will free indeed, because real freedom starts from the inside. Money cannot buy that. Success cannot manufacture it. Only God can transform our hearts. But when we talk about freedom, is going to cost you your faith, your belief. And maybe you don't got to believe in what I believe in, but what are you believing in? There has to be something that you are believing in that is bigger than you. And it's the faith sometimes that is going to push you through, that is going to pull you through. It's believing that all of this is for a reason. It's believing that there's a greater purpose. It's believing that there's lights at the outside of the tunnel, because that certainty and that belief is what's going to get you to the other side while you're in your process. So yes, that freedom is going to cost you your faith. It's going to cost you your belief. You have to have something that is greater than you, that is bigger than you. And why not it be God is with me, for me, and loves me unconditionally, and I have been set apart for such a time as this. I have been called and chosen and set apart for such a time as this. And I know one thing that always gets me through is like, God never lets hard work go unnoticed. I know that. I know that like I know that. I know that the labor is plentiful. I know that the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. My coffee hasn't kicked in, y'all, so don't judge me. But I know these things. I know that abundance is part of my inheritance. So I know when you know that these things are your birthright, you move a little different. You move with a little bit different pep in your step. So it's important for you to identify what is the faith for you. What is the level of belief for you? What is it going to cost you? Freedom costs your identity. We'll let that sink in for a little bit. So one of the biggest lessons I have learned is that you cannot become who God has called you to be while trying to keep everyone else comfortable. Yes, you cannot become who God has called you to be while you're doing your best to keep everyone else comfortable. I remember, and some people were like, no, you've always been who you are. Yeah, but there were seasons that you feel like, oh my goodness, I just want this person to be comfortable around me, and I want that. And you know what? Respectfully, if I got to shrink to be so you're comfortable, I don't need to be in that area. And at this beautiful tender age of 40, honey, if there's a question about that, I ain't coming. I don't need to be there. I don't want it. And I love being in this beautiful space that I'm in, because man, oh man, is it a blessing to know that if my light is blinding you, you better put some shades on, or you better go hide under a rock, because I'm just not at that place in my life, respectfully, that I'm going to shrink so that you can feel comfortable. I'm just not. And if you ever find yourself in those spaces that you're like, oh my goodness, I need to be less than so I can be appreciated more or accepted more, those are not your people, honey, and that is not your circle. Let them remember the old version of you. And if who I am is not digestible, honey, you can choke. Respectfully. God forgive me, but it is what it is. It's how I feel. Because, and I'm being so transparent with you guys today because I'm so passionate about this. And I feel like sometimes, and I've been in that space, and if I could get out of that space a lot faster, man, my job is done here today. My job is done. Because there's so many times that we're like trying to walk on eggshells for people that are 50 times far more imperfect than you are. And I say this because, man, confidence, as I love to say it, is knowing that you're not better than anybody else and nobody else is better than you, right? But it's also you saying, hey, you know what? Everybody makes mistakes. I always say this, every saint has a past and every sinner has a future, right? We all bleed red. I don't know about shot. Like, you understand? So when you gotta get to this point, that you're saying, hey, you know what? I know that I've messed up. I know that I've done things that I'm ashamed of. I've done things that probably, man, I made some mistakes. I have some guilt. I have a past. We all do. But give yourself the freedom of letting it go. Give yourself the freedom of, hey, if that person doesn't, because of that, guess what? Let them keep knowing the old version of you that no longer exists. And some people want only access to the version of you that no longer exists. Give it to them and leave it. Let it go, because growth requires letting it go. And sometimes freedom means giving yourself permission to become someone you've never been before. Sometimes freedom means giving yourself permission to become someone you've never have been before. Freedom costs saying no. 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 Every yes is also a no. And you're like, wait, what? If you're new here, you probably haven't heard me say this, but I always say your ability to say no is more important in certain seasons than your ability to say yes. Why do I say that? Because every opportunity is not your assignment. Every invitation does not mean that you need to be present. I've learned that protecting my peace is also part of protecting my purpose. And what I've also learned, that there have been situations where I've had to say, is it worth me protecting my peace, or is it worth me protecting my pride? Because I'm going to tell you, some people, I'm saved. I'm not soft. And some people be forgetting that, right? Again, remember, every saint has a past, every sinner has a future. So, I be having to have some extra time consulting with the Lord, God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit, because God's still working on me. And this is why, but I got to always remember, is it worth more me protecting my peace, or is it worth me more protecting my pride? Because when I learn to protect my peace, by default, I am protecting my purpose, because protecting my peace is a part of protecting my purpose. So sometimes saying no is I think it's more personal, but it's even more of a spiritual thing that you can do to protect your calling, to protect what it is that you need to be doing, because those things matter and they make a huge difference. So my rule of thumb is, if it's not a hell yes, it is a hell no. And that goes with anything and everything that I am doing, because a lot of times when I tell people, it's like, freedom costs saying no. Because when you say yes to one thing, sometimes you're saying yes to an invitation, and by default, you're saying no to the assignment God already gave you. You're saying no to the task that you have left to complete. You're saying no to the business. You're saying no to the next level. You're saying no to the next breakthrough of finance. You're saying no to your legacy. You're saying no to your children. You're saying no to those things that you're like, there's no way I'm not going to be able to do that. So again, every yes is also a no. So sometimes saying no is more important than your ability of saying yes. And lastly, but certainly not least, as we wrap it up today, freedom costs service. The more wiser I get, because, you know, we age fine like wine over here. I get it from my mama. Ew. The wiser I get, the more that I realize freedom isn't just about me. It's about who becomes freer. I don't even know if that's a word, but maybe. It's about who becomes freer just because I obeyed. And that's why we created this beautiful ecosystem of our community. Whether you are joining our community the first time through our Unplugged with Pam podcast, whether you are joining it through one of our experiences, whether it's Mastermind and Mimosas or Women Winning Wars or Mental Health Matters or our Creators Conference that's coming up, or one of our retreats around the world, or you just experience us speaking on stage, whatever that means. It's about who becomes freer because I obeyed. That is why I consult. That is why I coach. That is why I speak to transform people's lives. This is why we gather every Thursday morning, because if freedom only benefits me, then I fully have not understood the freedom assignment. So when you think of when you think of these things of, and again, not to go back to this, but this is just who I am, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's also freedom. It doesn't say where there's success, there's freedom. It doesn't say where there's money, there's freedom. It doesn't say where there's popularity, there's freedom. It doesn't say, oh, where there's acceptance, there's freedom. It says where God's Spirit is, that's the kind of freedom that I want. So when we celebrate Independence Day, and again, shout out to everyone fighting for their freedom. Again, congratulations to all of the Universal Petite Pageant winners across all ages. Shout out to each and every single one of y'all. And shout out to all of the contestants, because they were amazing. Talk about fighting for freedom. Shout out to my legendary nephew, godson, Jaden Guzman, who is turning green today in the infantry, United States military, Army infantry. Sorry, tongue tied here, but super emotional. Just a beautiful day that have inspired today's conversation, and of course celebrating the 250 years this weekend. And I'm incredibly grateful for all of the men and women who have sacrificed so that we can enjoy the freedoms that we have as Americans. But my prayer is that we don't stop here, because some of us have the political freedom, but not the emotional freedom. Some of us have the financial freedom, but not the peace. Some of us have successful careers, but are still prisoners of fear, of comparison, of unforgiveness. Some of us have so much incredible potential and so much legacy and know what our purpose is, but we're self-sabotaging it because we're so caught up with the old version of ourselves. So again, healing doesn't mean that you don't ever experience grief. It just does not become the roots and the control. Grief does not control you. Pain does no longer control you. Purpose is what's driving you. So when you're celebrating this weekend and across the barbecues and the time and the laughs and the games and all of the things, I just want you to ask yourself, what has been holding me captive? What comfort am I refusing to leave? What forgiveness am I refusing to give? What fear am I allowing to make decisions for me? Because if freedom isn't free, because it's not, right? Freedom is not free. It costs Jesus everything. And becoming who God has created you to be will cost you something too. And I can tell you from experience, leaving corporate cost me comfort, but it gave me purpose. Losing my mom, loved ones, broke my heart, but it deepened my faith, my compassion, empathy. Building businesses has cost me sleep, certainty, security, but it gave me time freedom, it gave me impact, and the ability to serve people all around the world. Every single worthwhile freedom has a price. And I promise you, with every fiber in my being, it is worth paying. God bless you guys. Much love. As always, it is a pleasure, honor, and privilege to chat with you guys. And that concludes today's episode of Unplugged with Pam, brought to you by Chosen Global. Make sure you guys follow us on all the platforms, from YouTube to Spotify, Buzzsprout, Apple Podcasts, you name it, Amazon. God bless you guys. And remember, the greatest freedom you'll ever experience is found in peace. It's found in becoming the person God created you to be. Be great. God bless. Love y'all. Peace.